Well, I'm super excited to have my friend Eric Rivera on the podcast. Eric, how you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Many of you probably know about Eric Rivera. He's a chef in Seattle. He's head of this incubator. I don't know what you call it, Eric, an incubator, restaurant incubator called Addo.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very quick name I came up with. The whole concept of it is just figuring stuff out. I think that's what it's always been. And, me trying to get a restaurant for myself and figure out how to make things work with not the normal way to do it. And so we change, evolve, and kind of move things around all the time in order to kind of keep going. And that's pretty much the gist of what I do.
You know what? That actually sounds like something people might need to do in this, new post-apocalyptic landscape that we're calling the world of coronavirus. So that's what the podcast is about. I really wanted to connect with you, Eric, because some of the things I'm seeing you do to bob and weave and adapt, I think are interesting. I want to talk through those. Yeah. So we're going to dive into that. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your background, because you have an interesting one. You've been around in food for at least a decade. You were in Chicago working for Alinea. Yep. Kind of head of their culinary. Talk us a little bit about your background.
I started, about 10, 11 years ago as a professional cook, culinary school, that whole deal, working in, high-end restaurants around the world. Went to Chicago as director of culinary research for Alinea, the whole group. So everything from, helping people launch their own restaurants, hotels, working at a 3 Michelin star restaurant, one of the best in the world, all the way down to, helping people concept out fast food restaurants, literally everything in between of food stuff. I've kind of worked on it. And so for me, I've always been very impartial as to what restaurants could or should be or how they should work. I've always just treated it like a business, which my background before this was in business and mortgage insurance, financial services. So I think adding those two stories of my life has kind of helped me, kind of break down barriers of how things should be.
Yeah. And I think, breaking down barriers, just, for those of you who haven't been to Eric's Addo incubator space in the Bauer neighborhood of Seattle, what I like about it is like you're constantly coming up with crazy concepts. Like, let's have a video game themed restaurant for like a night. And then the next night you might be something else. Like, you truly are. And then you also invite in neighborhood food producers to allow them to basically sell their food in your store. So it seems like it's all about just kind of experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the way I study data, the way that I look like what our guests want. And then, guest acquisition, meaning how am I going to get these people in if they've never been in for the first time? Does that mean that they're going to come in when it's a $200 a night thing? Or does it mean, a $13 thing that's a fried chicken sandwich night? So everything in between of that pricing, and on certain days is very dynamic pricing. It's able to allow me to pinpoint who that guest is and who that next guest is and what happens to the repeat diner and how many times they come in and what I can do to keep things exciting and fun for them. I mean, we have more than 100 different experiences that we do, everything from, the Not a Popeyes fried chicken night to 20-course tasting menus that are, very experiential. And they take a couple hours and, people move around the room and they see all these lights and smoke and fire and all this kind of crazy stuff. But, on the very fundamental thing, our goal is to make good food and have a rad experience. So, that's not typical for the restaurant, because I've had people approach me tons of times. They're like, what's your business plan? And what's this? And what's that? And I'm like, my business plan is to make money so I can pay for my employees, pay the rent, pay the bills. However I need to get there. It's just like any other business. They're going to do it however they need to, but there's such a restriction on the idea of what a restaurant should be, that I think a lot of people don't let themselves be that creative.
Yeah. So let's get into that, right? So let's kind of talk about surviving and recreating and reinventing yourself in this new era of coronavirus. I mean, I think the thing about this is the news is unfolding so fast. I wake up every day and I'm literally scared to look at the news. One of the things that happened here in the Seattle market, literally, I think in the past 48 hours is Jay Inslee, our governor, basically said all restaurants and bars, you can't have people dine in. That followed, or basically, I don't know who started it. Maybe it's New York that did it first, but we're seeing this that probably will sweep across the country as we try to contain this contagion.
Very quickly. Yep.
And so the news cycle is crazy fast. And so, but I want to back up and ask you about what you saw. Talk about your last month and what you kind of the panic or the dread or what kind of were you seeing?
I mean, I think it's a little different for me because I sell tickets and I study the numbers of my restaurant. And so for me, I have things happening right now all the way through the end of the year, but I can also see like what day-to-day sales are happening and then look at that as a small sample size or large sample size really quickly and go, hey guys, like we're not hitting our numbers right now in sales. What's the problem? And so then I can see and go, I think people are starting to like respect the idea of what coronavirus is. This is 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? When people, it was just a first thing and it's, it's China and it's who knows if it's going to get to us and what is it really? And, everybody was kind of kicking the idea around. And then once Amazon and some of the other big tech companies kind of shut it down and said, hey, all of our workers are working from home. That was the first indicator for me that if they're taking it seriously, then everybody else is going to start taking it seriously because here in Seattle, I mean, a lot of the people and a lot of our guests that come in are those people. They are those types.
Yep.
And so we get the indicators from them and they're, I'm literally sitting right in front of them and they're like, hey, I'm kind of working from home. Like, what do you think? What are you guys going to do? And I'm like, well, we're going to have to change everything, and that's my way to think about it and going like, we're not going to stop. The safety of my employees, the safety of our guests and everything comes first, right? But if I can build it, I started this business as by myself in my apartment, 2 seats at a time. If I need to scale it back to that just to make it keep going, I will, but that's not my intention. So for me, it puts my head on a swivel going like, if people are going to be at home, what can I do? Well, we launch a pantry program. If they're going to be at home, what do? We set up an auto home thing where we're delivering to them. Okay, cool. So what else does that do? What else kind of things? Well, we do this auto for the people thing where we can go into different areas of the city and just do a pickup, no contact pickup, and it allows us to be mobile. I used to do pop-ups all around the city all the time. And so for me, this is normal. This is normal. Having to like do this on a daily basis where I'm like in these different situations or scenarios, that's just kind of the way things have been for me for the last 2.5 years since I took on, being an independent business owner. I don't have investors. I don't have a group of people telling me what to do. I just have to figure it out. And if I wait for somebody else, I'm fucked, and that's the kind of idea where I'm at. I'm like, I can't wait for a government to tell me you need to do this or that, or we're going to help bail you out, or we're going to give you money or a loan or whatever. That's not an option for me, And so I have to be very proactive and I have to look at stuff and I have to be creative. And, it's interesting to me because a lot of chefs in high regard are always seen as these creative and innovative types. But with this stuff, I'm seeing a lot of them that just kind of like, we'll just close, and it's like, there's so much more that can be done. And that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I'm like, what else can we do? How can we help more people? We're in a position to hire right now. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like, to contrast you with like Tom Douglas, right? Who is like an iconic Seattle chef. Like, he's everyone knows Tom Douglas, pretty much a worldwide reputation. Right. And like, he basically just said like a week ago, we're shutting everything down. And I'm not to rip on Tom Douglas. Like we've seen this in New York City, we said Jose Andres is shutting down, but although Jose Andres is turning his into like community kitchens, which is super admirable.
Very different.
Well,
yeah. You see, on my side, I look at stuff like that and I'm like, if I had 1/10 of those resources available to me, I would love to be able to sit down with a staff and a board and a whoever and investors and go, guys, what can we really do here? Is really closing the best thing for everybody? Is laying off all 800 of our employees right now the best thing for our employees? It becomes to be like this. People will go, oh yeah, so-and-so restaurant is closing and so-and-so chef behind it. But then there's never that secondary question of, yeah, but what about the employees? What's happening to them? What's going on with their ideas? I have a friend of mine, and she just posted on our Facebook. She's like, oh yeah, my weekly unemployment is like $339 a week. She's like, that's, 2/3 less than I'm making with tips. What am I supposed to do? And just thinking about it like that, it's I can understand as a business and looking at profit and loss statements and sitting with investors and having 20 plus restaurants and holy shit, it's $500,000 in payroll. I mean, I look at it like that and I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty staggering, but you also put yourself in that position with having all these things and opening these restaurants and doing all these things. I'm over here thinking the same way, but I have one restaurant And it's like, I'm going like, how can we be scrappy and how can we keep like working through this?
I mean, I think part of it's a mindset shift. Like, you're probably like me, like this is I don't think we're understanding to say like, this is like, we need to be on a war footing. Like it literally is bigger than 9/11 at this point. You can't just shut the world down for 2 months and not expect to have like a massive recession, if not a depression. And so like, if you're just concerned about corporate profits, and I don't want to go on a tirade, but like you need to maybe think about like the social good, and you don't want to get to the world of social unrest when no one has money. Right. So,
and that's the biggest thing on my side. I mean, look, I have employees, and I've gotten finally to the point where on April 1st, I told everybody, hey guys, like, we're to the point right now where I'm actually going to be able to offer benefits, and that's a thing, and you're going to be able to subscribe to this. Even within the last like month, that's something I think about every day, and I'm like, we're going to need to figure out a way to keep that, keep my word, right? So how can I get more things or sell more stuff in order to keep them with their benefits that I promised them to have on April 1st? We're not changing that. I'm not going to change that. And so for me, it's like, what's the priority here? Is it just to be open? No, there's responsibilities that come with that. What if one of my people ends up, becoming sick, or two people or whatever? And I'm like, well, we got to figure that out. We got to be proactive. We got to make sure all of our employees are healthy in the way of doing this. We're checking in with them. When they come in, we're like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? And everything's cool. But if we're like, we told them already, if you have any sort of idea of you're starting to feel sick, then you need to not be here. And a lot of the testing stuff that's been happening with coronavirus, they're like, you can still be a carrier without showing any symptoms. So that's another scary aspect of it too. Yeah. But it's just like, it's such a weird give and take, because really at the end of the day, it's just, this is the industry, Yeah. And so we shut it down or not. I can't tell you how many times, when I worked for other people, I was a smaller line cook or whatever else, there was no sick days. There's no times where you're like, hey chef, I cut my finger. What's up? Can I go home? They're like, just, fucking cauterize it on the stovetop and you'll be fine. And these are like the types of normal things that I'm used to, but I don't talk to my employees that way. I just look at it like, hey, we can either do this or not, up to you guys. There's no, gun to anybody's head here going, hey, you need to do this, or here's my expectation. I already told everybody, is like, if you need to go do your thing, fine. But, I'm trying to build this so that way we don't have to cut hours. We don't have to lay anybody off.
Yeah. And so one of the things one of the things you're dealing with on the front lines is, we're in Seattle, like the infection rate is pretty high here. People are worried about like, food service workers. And so like, you have to manage that. You have to think about like, okay, is someone, if they're showing symptoms, how do I deal with that? If they aren't showing symptoms, we realize they could still be sick. How do we deal with that as a food provider? Right.
And so then that steps up. So on our side with sanitation methods, I mean, we've literally gone through all of our entire restaurant. We, deep clean the entire thing. We've gotten rid of all the tables in the dining room. We've gotten rid of all the chairs in the dining room. So when people come to pick up, we have a no contact area. And so when they come to pick up all of their food, all the experiences we have now are to take out, or we're doing optional delivery on some of them. So then we're building a different restaurant already within the scope of what we're doing. So it allows both sides, meaning guests and us, to be safer. And when people come to pick up, there's no chairs in the dining room. So that way isn't an impression like they can just hang out and sit here. It's very different. Yeah. And if you'd have told me 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I was actually looking at a new restaurant space and I was ready to sign a letter of intent on having another restaurant.
Well, hopefully we can put ink on paper and like, we're going to get through this. But I do want to talk a little bit about what you're doing to kind of bob and weave, right? So, some of the things I've seen you put out there on social is Addo at Home. And where I think you're actually doing food delivery, and then also this concept of a pantry. So talk about both of those.
Yeah. So the Addo at Home thing is basically 3 meals per person with a bottle of wine. It's $95, and we'll deliver that once a week if they want to, or they can pick it up from here at the restaurant.
Are your own employees delivering, or are you using a third party?
No, we're doing it. When this thing started, I tried all of the delivery apps. None of them really worked for us because they're charging so much both ways, to the guests and to us, that I just eliminated them all. So we have a van, we have all these kinds of things, and we're going to be doing direct delivery also, because I trust our employees' sanitation. And I can control that with them. So I don't know if giving something to a third party, that would be the same standard as we have. So I also want to be careful of that. So, that's one thing with that. The auto home, with the auto pantry, it's a collection of dry goods stuff, sauces, stocks, soups, a lot of the different things that we work on now, with a wide range of ingredients and stuff that we work with. It works out to be something where we can package that up, have it ready to go. So that way, if somebody's at home and they don't necessarily want to prep something for 2, 3, 4 hours, they can just have a good, pantry set at home. And then finally, we have Auto for the People, which is the satellite pop-ups that we're doing throughout the city.
Yeah, talk about that one, because I haven't seen that. Give me more details.
Yeah, so I started that one. It's $9 bowls. And when you look at it and you purchase it, there's an option to pay forward. So you can buy as many pay forward bowls as you want, or you could buy them for yourselves. And then in different locations around the city, we're doing essentially, loading up the van, going out. You can pick up the food cold. You can have it. But the paid forward option over the last few days has raised over 100 bowls that are paid forward, which is super dope. Over 1,000 bowls. So
I come there and I'm hungry and like someone's paid before me, or is it somewhere where you're going out and find people in need?
Both.
Okay.
So both. The communication on my side has been, hey, we'll have some stuff here, because not everybody has internet, not everybody has social media or whatever. So it's really getting the word out in the way that we do it with like targeted ads and all the stuff that we're pretty good at. That's number one. Number two is contacting charities. I've been talking to Mary's Place, and then we're talking to a few other ones, and going like, hey, we have a certain amount of budget for that to drop these out because they've been paid forward. Are you guys cool with accepting this?
That's cool. And so, and as someone who's a restaurant operator in a city that has a lockdown on dine-in, to do a pop-up, is that something that's still within the guidelines?
I mean, on my side, I'm a licensed caterer as well. So I'm pretty flexible, and I can cater off site, and it's kind of like a thing where I'm going to make it happen. If people are buying it, and people need food, I'm going to get it to them. I mean, it's a very like the idea of Jose Andres and what he's done over the last couple of years. It's not, hey, we need to figure out all the details first. He's been very much, let's just go. We need to go.
He hops on a plane and goes into like the worst disaster zone ever. Exactly. And feeds as many people as possible.
I've been really inspired by that, because I've seen, again, other people in the industry that it feels like they have a lot, not do as much. And so when I see a chef at that highest level that's regarded, that's amazing, I go, well, man, if he could figure it out, I guess we can figure something out too. And our guests have been really, really super generous with the Pay It Forward program. So it's allowed me more flexibility in going like, you know what, if we show up at this place, we have an extra 30, 40 bowls, I don't give a shit. I'm not charging anybody for anything. If we're able to donate that much more to a charity like Mary's Place and have more dropped off food, amazing. We're also piloting something right now. We reached out to local farms because all of the farmers markets here in the city have been shut down. Those people have produce and meat products that are just
That's a huge thing. I hadn't thought about that for some reason until like just very recently. All this food is going to go bad.
Sitting there, when they plant a crop, it's expectation to sell a certain amount over time. When they're breeding animals, it's the same thing. So all of those farmers markets are shut down, and a lot of these farmers don't have the contact in the city and don't have the time to, wake up at 3:00 in the morning, put the things in the van, come to the city, sell the stuff, go back, and then expect, to target 40, 50 people throughout the city. That's insane. I mean, you can drive around and make 10 deliveries and that's your entire day. That's not enough. So what we're doing is we're going to be working with them, different farmers throughout here, whether they're produce or meats or any of that kind of stuff. And essentially what we're doing is a box. I would say it's pretty similar to what Imperfect Produce model is, but we're doing it with local people that are in need to kind of like get rid of stuff, get rid of their products. They're still super high quality, but just get it out to them. And then we'll be highlighting the actual farms, giving them the information so that they can keep in contact with them and go, hey, I got something from your box, from Auto, now that you guys are back, when are you guys coming back, or can I join your CSA? It's really just about opening the path up for most people. Rather than just saying like, oh yeah, we're just going to take all the farm stuff, rebrand it as our name, and then put it out there.
That's great. If you saw the pictures out of China, I just saw them like I think yesterday, where they just had like mountains of rotten food because they just couldn't get it out. Like they just put a lock and everything. And so it's admirable to help farmers markets and everyone get that food out there, people in need. And even if they have to almost give it away, just giving it to people, because there's going to be a lot of hungry people out there. I think that's awesome. You also started this one thing that I was like, I didn't even know this until this morning. And I knew that you do in restaurant cooking classes, which I think is really cool. So like if people want to learn how to cook something, you actually do kind of like personalized classes for them.
Yep, absolutely.
You're taking that online now with your new reality.
So, we do cooking classes every Wednesday here, and I basically take people and talk to them and figure out what it is, with a category that we put out there. So like knife skills or stock sauces and soups or Puerto Rican food or Italian food or whatever. And then I find out with them individually, like what it is they want from the class. And we kind of just freestyle it through the whole thing to show some people who may be a little bit more advanced than not. So my thing now is there's a lot of people at home that probably don't know how to cook, haven't been forced to
with
cook.
Lots of spare time on their hands.
Yeah, and the way that a lot of grocery stores are running right now, it's people are actually forced to buy things they probably weren't buying before, meaning like beans or rice or, normal things that they probably have never cooked themselves. So it's identifying a lot of these things and going like, hey, here's a 5-minute video, super easy, how to like cook rice on a basic level, nothing crazy, no jargon, not flashy, videography. It's really just like, all you have to do is this, this, and this. Very simple, black and white. Because I think instilling confidence in someone when they're at home dealing with all of the other crazy stuff they're dealing with, the worst thing to have happen is when you're just like hungry and you spend an hour or 2 hours doing something and it's a failure. That just adds insult to injury, with all this stuff. So if they have like something from us that says, hey, here's how to make white rice, and they might not have, what they think they need to have, meaning like a rice cooker or Instapot or a Thermomix. They don't necessarily have to have all that stuff. And because most people don't have those types of things at home. And so it's really like kind of just breaking it down and going like, hey, if I was at home, here's what I would do if I came into your house. I would go, oh, we have this. All right, well, we'll figure it out. It's more of that attitude.
Yeah. Well, I think having all these things that you're doing where you're basically doing virtual cooking classes or like pop-up restaurants or pop-up areas and bowls and at home, these are things I think that you have learned because you've exercised that muscle of being, kind of innovator and always trying to innovate at the edges around food. But if you look at like a lot of more traditional restaurants, they're not out of the box thinkers in the same way. I mean, most of us aren't. I think what you do is like pretty crazy stuff and in a cool way. What is some advice you'd give to just a more traditional restaurant and how to survive in this new era?
I think for them, it's realizing the space and the resources you have available in your restaurant, meaning like a full-on kitchen, staff, ingredients, a repertoire of stuff that you make, and then expanding upon that. So if you want to get repeatable business, they might come to your restaurant maybe like once every 6 months, once every year, who knows, depending on what level and price point. But now it's like, if you can offer a wider range and just say, hey, instead of being the Italian restaurant, I'm pretty sure if you got in touch with your staff and said, hey, does anybody else here know how to make any other styles of food? I'm pretty sure you can come up with a menu that's a little bit more flexible. If you are that neighborhood space that just does that, Italian thing really well or Thai food really well or whatever, and people are just gravitating towards that and the business is great because of that, hey, do your thing. But what I found with my restaurant is that, we've had guests that have come in more than 70, 80 times now in the last year. And the reason why they do it is because we offer something new and different. And so on my side, I'm always looking at what could be the next thing, what could be that other idea, what could be another option for us to bring to the guests, because at the end of the day, if you can keep that guest excited, they'll stick with you for anything. We have people buying pay it forward stuff from all over the world, and they're going like, hey man, I came into your restaurant once, I'm super happy you're doing this. And that just creates revenue for us in a way that can keep a charity thing forward. It could also pay for our hourly employees, and we don't have to lay anybody off. I mean, it's awesome.
That's awesome. And so if anyone out there wants to, if you're in the Seattle area and you want food delivered to your house made by Eric and his team, I suggest you go to the website and we'll get that website from Eric. But if they want to do a virtual cooking class and you live in somewhere like Montreal, also think about that as well. But Eric, where can they find out more information to get access to your food or services?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mobilizing kind of everything through social right now. So on Instagram, Eric Rivera Cooks. We have a YouTube channel that I'll be launching more as just this cooking thing, and it'll be a live stream, so that way people can archive it. People can kind of check it out, whenever they need to. But it's nothing going to be that's crazy fancy. It's more just about talking about food really quickly, kind of encouraging people and instilling confidence and getting to do it. So that's kind of what we've always done here.
That's awesome. And you do have a website. Should people go there?
I do. It's just ericriveracooks.com. And then from there, you can check out the auto stuff we have going on. It'll send you to 2 different sites. One's our Ballard space, and the other one's our flagship menus. But just go for the Ballard one now. The top 3 or 4 experiences available are the ones that we've been talking about. Additionally, all of the other experiences we have are all takeout now. So if people buy, the Puerto Rican food, or if they're doing tapas night, or if they're doing any of these other things, ramen night, or we have burger month coming up, all of them will be made ready for takeout. And we'll do that as long as we need to.
You mentioned Puerto Rican food. I did have some amazing Puerto Rican food at your specialty. I think you'd even say that in your restaurant. And your mom made some flan, or at least you used your recipe. It's the best flan ever. It's the best flan that's ever.
It's pretty good. Yeah, no, it's crazy. I always have people tell me about flan and how much they love it. And then I'm like, hey, why don't you try my mom's? And they'll try it and they'll be like, oh my God, this is a whole different. I'm like, yeah, it really is. It's like when you grow up eating it, you don't really start to understand what it is until you try other people's, and then you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. So it's really cool. Yeah. And that'll be part of our auto at home stuff too. It'll be really simple stuff like pork, rice, beans, yuca, some mom flan. They can kind of have a little bit of what we do here, for themselves at home, which is really cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to order some mom flan. Thank you, Eric, for getting on the phone and getting on Zoom and telling everyone about what you're doing. I think it's going to be an interesting new era, and I think your innovation is inspiring.
I really appreciate it. And thanks for always supporting us.
All right, man.
All right. Bye.